It seems in life that catastrophe is inevitable. No matter who you are, no matter what race, sex, or socioeconomic status, something, somewhere, at some time is going to go wrong. If this is such an inevitability, what is the best way to deal with it? And the answer to that question might just lie in the exact place you do not want to go. And here's how I know that. On April 17th, 2018, I was on Southwest Flight 1380. We were flying from LaGuardia to Dallas Love Field. I'd been in New York touring Sarah Lawrence College. The moments before taking off seem unbearably normal to me and surreal as I look back on them. I was sitting next to my mother with a cup of coffee, eating a donut. I had my copy of The Economist and my headphones. I was going through my usual pre-flight ritual of alleviating my flight anxiety by thinking about flight statistics. Next to my mother was a 6-month-old baby. And of course, we know that nothing bad happens on a flight with a 6-month-old baby. At 32,000 feet, the left engine, which I was sitting on, exploded. Shrapnel flew back, damaging the fuselage and the wing. A window was broken, causing us to rapidly depressurize, and a woman sitting on that window was partially sucked out. She died. Amongst the screaming and yelling and general chaos of the situation, I was next to my mother with my arm around her, trying to comfort her and tell her it was okay, as I was looking to my left at the mangled visage of the wing and engine, which I was not so certain in that moment was going to stay on the whole time. But as you can see, I'm here. We landed at Philadelphia at 200 miles per hour, which was the only runway in that immediate era that could accommodate us at such speeds. At that point, we were shuffled onto buses, and I expressed to my mother at that point that I was never going to get back on a plane again, which at that point is a pretty logical thought to have, I think. After I'd said that, a woman sitting next to me turned to me, and she said, "You just have to take that leap of faith." Well, I was still convinced I was never going to fly again, which is a pretty hard thing to do for a Texas kid going to school in California. So I started to attend the Pepperdine Counseling Center and talk with them and work out a game plan about how I was going to get back on a plane. And I also started to do a bit of research on my own. And what I found is this behavioral psychological technique called exposure therapy that is often used for treating anxiety disorders, PTSD, and phobias. And what exposure therapy involves is the voluntary exposure to anxiety-inducing stimuli, which, when you say it out loud, that sounds rather counterintuitive. There's plenty of things that you or I are afraid of, and that we have a very logical reason for being afraid of them, right? But the American Psychological Association makes very clear that while in the short term, getting away from that stimuli might be a good strategy for alleviating your anxiety, in the long run, it can actually make your anxiety much worse. So exposure therapy is all about putting yourself in that situation that you don't want to be in. Exposure therapy is all about taking the leap of faith. And the amazing thing about exposure therapy that I learned, that while it's not specifically geared towards getting rid of your anxiety, it might for some. What it does for most people is that it gives them the strength and the courage and the resilience to overcome the challenges and catastrophe and tragedy that we will inevitably face in life. And what's amazing about that strength and competency that you gain from that experience is that it can be generalized to any other challenge that you might face in your life. Now, how can this idea at the crux of exposure therapy be utilized to overcome any other thing that you or I might face in the future? Pepperdine University knows firsthand that catastrophe and tragedy can strike at the most unexpected of times. On November 7th, 2018, many students were at the borderline shooting, and we lost Elena Housley, a member of the Pepperdine family. That very next day, we were threatened by the Woolsey fire. Now, no matter how much I wish I did not go through what I went through on 1380, no matter how much I wish we as a community did not go through what we went through, I cannot retrospectively unwill something. What I've learned is that the only way to overcome these things that we face is to face them directly. Now, the specific type of exposure therapy that I latched onto is called graded in vivo exposure therapy. And that, believe me, is a whole bunch of psychological jargon to basically say incremental, in-person voluntary exposure to anxiety-inducing stimuli. What does that look like for me? What have I learned from that? What is my anxiety-inducing stimuli? Planes and flying. So, I started out small, again, incremental, and I would look up in the sky whenever I'd hear a plane fly by. And then eventually I got my sister to send me movie clips or TV shows with plane scenes in them that I could watch. And then the next step of the plan that we got together at the Pepperdine Counseling Center was that I was going to drive by an airport and then eventually see a plane in person and then get on a plane and fly. But because of the Woolsey fires, those last few steps had to be crammed together into one final step. And so I'm proud to say that eventually I drove to LAX. I got on a plane and I flew. And I'm proud to say that I have been on 13 flights and I plan on being on many more. Because I was on 1380, I was able to overcome my anxiety of flying. And because I went through that and overcame my anxiety, I could overcome anything else that week of the Woolsey fire had to throw at me. And because we together as a community had a collective experience, overcame it, we now have the strength and the courage and resilience to overcome any other challenge that might come our way in the future. And so now I ask you, learn from my experience and learn from exposure therapy. Next time catastrophe, challenge, tragedy is at the door, don't run from it. Next time, face it directly, because it's the only way to gain the strength to overcome it. Next time, take the leap of faith. Thank you.